Hello and welcome back to the track. So can Ferrari still win the Constructors in 2026? Yes, but the question is how? Because looking at the points right now, most people would probably tell you it's over. That Mercedes took it, but I don't think that's true. In fact, I don't think either championship is anywhere near close to being decided, and let me explain why. First, let's look at who's actually in the fight. And I feel pretty confident saying that this championship has become a two-team battle between Ferrari and Mercedes, but every once in a while we see the Red Bull or McLaren look like they might be joining them, but then they fall off pretty quickly. Let's take these two teams and start with McLaren. They're just McLaren. McLaren is McLaren. Every time they bring out an upgrade, they're fast for that weekend, and they start wondering if they're back in the fight. And then a couple of races later, each team develops faster than McLaren does, and McLaren are right back where they started. And they can't really seem to get a grip on that. The upgrades almost always work, but I don't think that they're bringing them often enough. On top of that, they're suffering more than expected from being a Mercedes customer team. Look at the last weekend. They brought upgrades to Hungary, and they left with a full belly. Well, at least Lando did. Oscar was still hungry, but watch them still struggle after the summer break, except for when they bring upgrades. We've even heard rumors about them starting their own engine because they don't want to be a customer team to Mercedes because they don't understand truly how the systems work for that engine. And I think that's what's hurting their development. And then look at Red Bull. They have the fastest car, don't get me wrong, but the team is not the same caliber that it once was. A lot of the top people who built that dominant team are gone. That doesn't mean that the people there now aren't good, but they're clearly missing something. And I mean, they're good because just look at their engine. But even with the weight reduction, their aero package is not good enough to keep up with Mercedes or Ferrari. So for me, that only leaves Ferrari and Mercedes for contention. So now let's compare these two, because this is where things get spicy. Mercedes probably have the most complete package on the grid. They've done a really good job at balancing the engine and the chassis, and this is perfect because now we actually get to see 3 examples of how each team chose to develop their car, and we see what happens when you overdevelop one area. And the perfect examples are Ferrari, who have a weaker engine and turbo, but their chassis is incredible, 10 out of 10. And that's what's keeping them in the fight, because how else do you explain a 4% deficit to Red Bull and a 2% deficit to Mercedes, and yet they're still consistently getting on the podiums, and we've even got the first Lewis Hamilton win in red. Red Bull have the fastest engine, but a chassis that's just complete crap, and it's nowhere near good enough for Max. And this tracks because they partnered with Ford and they wanted to have a beast of an engine, and because they had Max, they probably thought that it would be enough to make up for the crappy chassis. And Mercedes are somewhere in the middle, obviously, but they have a lot of reliability problems. I think people forget where this whole thing actually started, or at least for me. And in order for you guys to see that, we need to go back to preseason testing. Day one, Haas, they go out on the track and they complete 200 laps on day one with a brand new Ferrari engine without a single issue. Meanwhile, Mercedes power units were struggling with systems, engine shutting off, random power losses, and it wasn't smooth as it was with Ferrari. And all the customer teams are worried except for Mercedes. From that moment, I felt that Fred's plan could work, which I also made a video on this. Get a good enough engine in the car, build an incredible chassis around it, get the ADUO benefits, and then let the car make up the difference as time goes on and upgrades come in. Now we fast forward to now, Mercedes problems haven't gone away. If anything, they've gotten worse. And it's not just George or Kimi having these issues. We've seen both Williams struggle. We've seen both McLaren struggle. Just recently in Hungary, we saw Oscar retire because of reliability issues with this engine, and we saw the same thing from George. Matter of fact, rumors are that his engine just straight up broke halfway through the race, and then water started leaking because of it. The point is, again, we're seeing that reliability not pay off for anybody that has a Mercedes engine. They're dealing with energy deployment issues, engine behavior, random power losses. Just 2 weeks ago, we watched George suddenly lose power down the straight in Spa on the opening lap. Meanwhile, Ferrari are dealing with roughly a 4% engine deficit to Red Bull and a 2% to Mercedes. And on top of that, they're gonna get the 2 extra upgrades this year and the bigger cost cap. This is showing me that Ferrari's strategy is working. I feel like I keep saying strategy wrong, or like funny. I don't know. Maybe my mouth is too dry. At the beginning of the season, I predicted that Mercedes would build a decent lead in the first half of the season, and this is exactly what we're seeing. And Ferrari would slowly chip away at that gap during the second half, and that's exactly what's happening, or like little by little already. Ever since Canada, Mercedes haven't looked like the same. Don't get it twisted, they're still very, very strong, but they're losing that element that made everybody scared. Ferrari have consistently been putting up at least one car on the podium. Silverstone and Spa were both supposed to be the worst tracks for Ferrari. I mean, I was genuinely ready to not have a good time that weekend, but holy crap. Instead, they outscored Mercedes on tracks that we were not expecting to suit the SF26, and we're only halfway through the season now. Now, Budapest, this is the most recent race. On paper, that was a circuit that should have fit Ferrari's car the best, and it did. And if it wasn't because Mercedes had a better strategy and Ferrari botching theirs, they should have won that race, or at least fought McLaren for it. But at least we can take away the fact that Mercedes got lucky, because Ferrari did have the pace to fight McLaren, and this is where they really start eating into that championship lead. The combination of medium slow corners coming up in the next few races are going to absolutely be the best thing for this SF26. It is going to be where it thrives the most. But for me, the biggest race is Monza. If Ferrari can beat Mercedes at Monza, then I honestly think it's game over for Mercedes, and it would only be a matter of time. Monza should theoretically be Ferrari's weakest track. There are only 2 heavy braking points. If Ferrari can beat Mercedes there, then I don't really see tracks like Azerbaijan or Qatar being a major problem afterwards. Even the Malaysian Grand Prix, which has 2 big-ass straights, don't get me wrong, this isn't going to be easy, and it's going to be very close. And the more pressure that Mercedes feels because of their reliability issues, the more that's going to help Ferrari. Then you have the drivers. George has looked frustrated with the car the past couple weekends, so we all heard his radio at Spa, and that honestly would naturally just put more pressure on Kimi to be the one to score the points for this team. That naturally puts way more pressure on Kimi than he needs right now, and it's only his 2nd season. Do I think he can handle the pressure? Honestly, probably, but whether he actually does is a whole other question. And this is where I start seeing similarities with what happened with Red Bull. I'm not saying it's the same situation yet, it's too early to tell, but you can't ignore the similarities. If George continues to struggle while Kimi becomes the one consistent point scorer, Mercedes could find themselves relying on a 19-year-old the same way that Red Bull relied on Max. And I don't see George getting out of his own head anytime soon, and I don't think that they're actually going to be able to solve whatever it is that's going on with this car. I think their focus right now is generally to get Kimi that driver's championship, and that's not going to help George at all. But then again, I could be wrong. I mean, maybe teams do care about the constructors, but I mean, talk about bad luck. George just can't seem to catch a break, or maybe Toto's just making room for Max. That's a video for another day. Meanwhile, Ferrari have Lewis, Hamilton, and Charles Leclerc, and Mercedes only have one car consistently scoring big points, while Ferrari have both drivers finishing near the front. That's where this constructor is going to take shape, and that's when it's going to start getting decided. And that's why I think Ferrari can still win it. And that brings me to my next question. If Ferrari have a shot at winning the Constructors Championship, then does Lewis have a chance at the drivers? And I think he can. But make sure you subscribe, because that's exactly what we're talking about on Wednesday's video. Let me know what you guys think of this one. Do you think Ferrari still have a chance, or do you think it's 100% Mercedes and they got it in the bag and it's just a matter of time? Or is their reliability gonna catch up to them and be the reason why they lose this Constructors Championship? Or do I just need to bring down the hopium? You know, let me know. Till next time, box.